I immediately transitioned to moving backwards, reloading, and continuously moving the entire time. Let's go check our accuracy.
Transitioning with AR. Using the 2 cardboards, we're not shooting steel this close. Just want to reiterate on the communications is on the Peltor Contact 3 with the Disco 32 push to talk.
Welcome back. I'm Josh with Grim Results, and today we're going to be kind of talking over the FLIR BREACH PT Q135. So the FLIR BREACH is a thermal monocular made by FLIR. On the lower end of cost. I think I purchased mine, it was right around the mid 2000s. You can find it more than that, you can find it cheaper, you can buy them used. So the FLIR Breacher is a great addition to your night vision capabilities. Don't get me wrong, image intensifiers are fantastic. It truly is a wizard's eye, a magic, a superpower, however you want to say it. But it has its limitations. And those limitations can easily be augmented by the use of thermals. Now, whether that's a thermal monocular or a thermal overlay, such as like an E-Cody or a Jerry C, it's going to be up to you and if you can afford it. They do make thermal and image intensifier fusion models out there. They're quite expensive. So if you are on a budget and you're just looking to augment your night vision device on where it falls short, then the FLIR Breacher is a great addition, and it can help cover the area that the night vision is lacking in, such as picking up images in shadows, detecting images or threats at further distances without having to add an additional signature such as a white light or an IR light or an IR laser or anything like that. The FLIR Breach, it is nice. It has quite a few different features to it. I believe it has 6 different modes. It's going to have the white hot, black hot, rainbow, iron bow, Serpa, Arctic, and then outdoor alert. Outdoor alert is typically what I use. And as you can tell right now, we're doing a night vision and a thermal side-by-side matchup here. So we've got night vision and thermal going simultaneously right now so that you can kind of compare, contrast, and see the difference in the actual image quality of what you see, what you're looking at, and how all that plays into what it is that you're looking for. Obviously, I'm running the green phosphor PVS14 on my right, your left side of the screen, and the thermal is going to be on my left, your right side of the screen. And that thermal is being internally recorded on the FLIR Breach. One of the different benefits to the FLIR Breach model is it can hold up to 1,000 still images or 2.5 hours of video. Now, you don't get to select what resolution the video is recorded in or anything like that. And to be honest, when you do internally record anything onto the monocular itself, trying to review those images on the monocular, which you can do, it's just almost never worked for me. It'll show me one still image or one video or a couple stills, no videos, different things like that. But you can plug it into your computer and pull all the images or all the video off and put it on your computer hard drive. It basically acts as just a mass storage unit, external storage device for your computer, so you can just pull videos and images off of it. And I suppose you could put them on there too if you really wanted to for some reason. With the FLIR Breach, with the different modes, it is going to be kind of selective on where you're at, the environment you're in. Outdoor alert is where I typically leave mine at, simply because it detects the larger temperature variance with what you're looking at through the device, and then it will highlight whatever it is that's displaying a brighter heat signature than everything else compared to it. So that is very beneficial, especially if it's in the the winter time or it's colder environment out, the dirt is going to be colder, the rocks around you will be colder, and human body heat, it just stands out amazingly, or animal body heat if that's what you want to use it for. So the FLIR breach is not very weapon mounted friendly at this point. I'm still kind of playing around with it and trying to make something work with it, because I did buy it and I didn't want to have to buy more or another unit that could be either monocular or weapon mounted. When I have the FLIR breach, it should be able to do both. That's just my opinion, and I'm gonna do whatever I have to make it work. I have gotten the FLIR breach mountable to a weapon system in front of my optic so that I can actually see the image through my optic. The problem is that the rear lens on that FLIR breach, it has I think it was a 16 centimeter eye relief on it. So in order for you to get a crystal clear image without any sort of distortion or that fishbowl or fish eye effect, you've got to have it pretty close to your eye. There's not a lot of wiggle room on there. And no matter how I've been able to mount it on my weapon so far, I can never get it to my optic lens. Maybe it's the optics I'm using too, they're just too long for it. But every time I'm looking through it, I always get that distorted fisheye appearance to it. So it's a little frustrating, and I have yet to figure out where to get the actual FLIR, the breacher lens, it perfectly lined up with my optic lens so that I can retain my zero. Because as I'm looking through my optics, whether it's an EOTech or a Holosun optic, anything like that, as of right now, when I keep both eyes open and put my reticle on the target, and then I close my non-dominant eye, so I'm only looking through my optic now, let's say I am the target I'm aiming at, I have to aim just above my target's right shoulder in order to hit the target center mass. So not a huge gap. So I've at least gotten close to getting my breach lined up with my weapon optic. It's just not quite there yet. It's going to take some fine tuning. But I believe with a little bit of time, a little bit of hard work, it's going to be okay. I'll be able to match it up. And I'm still trying to figure out different lens options to try to eliminate that fisheye look through my optic. So now I'm going to go ahead and start switching things over and changing up the palette of how you are seeing this video. So now I have it set to the black hot mode. So as you can tell, everywhere where the heat difference, the heat is higher than it appears anywhere else, should have a black coloration to it. And you might be able to notice from the side-by-side video comparison that the FLIR breach is a 1x, so it is a 1 power magnification. There's nothing you can do about it. It does have digital zoom. I believe it has digital zoom to 4x. But as you do zoom in using the digital zoom, it does begin to pixelate everything. And in my opinion, it did absolutely no good in helping me to see anything better. Just the digital zoom is crap. So another good benefit about the FLIR breach is that it has heat detection. It says up to 300 yards. Okay, so the 300 yards I think is very, how do I put this? It is very liberal. Okay, so yes, it can detect signatures to 300 yards, or as I've seen, you could even get signatures even further than that. But you can in no way, shape, or form make any sort of determination on what that heat signature is, unless it's something massive that you know it to be there already. So now we are in the rainbow palette. Rainbow palette, I think the only real beneficial aspect to it is going to be indoors looking at plumbing, hot water piping, anything like that. I did not see any real use to it outside. It didn't seem to help me catch things that were hot any more than any of the other palettes. I think if anything, it is a little bit easier on the eyes than let's say white hot. The FLIR breach is able to pick up a lot of detail to a certain degree, but you're not going to be able to read somebody's name tape from 100 yards out on it, even with the digital zoom or anything like that. but you'll be able to make out gear that somebody's wearing within, I'd say, 50 yards, maybe 100 yards, you know, depending on what it is that they're wearing that you're looking at. But you will be able to make out weapon systems, types of gear, maybe types of bags, hats, insignias, and stuff like that. Not that that's exactly what it was made for, is identifying equipment like that. But it has very good image quality. It is able to pick up a lot of detail. Very happy with this purchase. It does come, instead of having a standard mount like a PVS14 would, which would have made life really, really better for everybody involved, they went with the MUM mount, MUM 13 or something like that mount. So you do have to get adapters in order to, a dovetail adapter in order to use it with any sort of mounting device for your night vision helmet or anything like that, a skull crusher. So the Breach is powered by a single CR123 battery, although there are companies out there that make different accessories or options for it. So you can, one of them is a battery extension so that you can utilize 18650 batteries with it. From what I understand, I haven't used it personally. From what I understand though, is that the Breach is unable to understand the battery that's in there, and so it'll always give you a low battery indication on the top of your screen, so you never know when your battery is actually low. But it does give you, extend out your battery life considerably. The other option is it does have a USB-C port, which you can use to pull the images and files off of the device to your computer, but you can also use it to power it from a external battery source. I personally use a little Anchor battery pack, and I think it's got 10 hours worth of battery life to it that I can use to power this Breach if I need to use it for very prolonged periods of time. So it's quite beneficial. We'll go ahead and switch up the palette. So now we are on the Iron Bow palette. Again, not one of my favorites. It seems to be one of those palettes that would be best served indoors, looking at utility stuff, hot wires, hot electronic equipment, hot water pipes, anything like that. Just to touch back on the battery life that I was speaking of, on a single CR123 battery, you get estimated about 90 minutes of runtime. Obviously that's going to depend on the temperatures outside, how often you're messing with the menus and stuff like that. But 90 minutes isn't bad. It's not terrible. It's not great either, considering your PVS14's on a single AA battery can run for a lot longer than that. Now we are on the Sepia palette. The Sepia palette is, from what I understand, people have had the most success trying to fuse their images or to have a actual thermal overlay on their night vision when they're running both the PVS14 and the FLIR Breach. I personally could never get the images to really overlay or to fuse. It was always very clearly distinct. One issue with it that I found is that the FLIR Breach, the image output is just so bright. It really does overpower the eyes, and it's a completely artificial brightness that your eye registers as a digital output, as opposed to the analog PVS14's, where it is a lot softer, it's a lot easier on the eyes. Even with the gain turned all the way up, it's still easier on the eyes than the FLIR Breach with its brightness all the way turned down. But it is a much simpler palette to use. You don't have, the Iron Bow or the Rainbow color palette where it's just dozens of different colors in different places, all contrasting, all fighting for that heat signature. The Serpa and the Arctic and Outdoor Alert, those are by far some of my favorites that I use the most. Obviously I tend to stick with the Outdoor Alert just because I really enjoy having that coloration of the heat signature pop with the rest of the terrain or environment just being a very subtle grayish hue. So this palette's not bad. The yellow tint to it, it is very helpful, again, on easing the eye strain. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to the Arctic. This is the Arctic palette. Nothing too fancy, nothing too special. Again, easier on the eyes than the white hot will be, especially over prolonged use or wear. So it does give your eye a little bit of a relief from that brightness. Even with the brightness turned down, the FLIR BREACH is very, very bright. If you ever purchase one, you will see it is very bright, and I tend to keep my brightness turned all the way down just to ease the strain on my eye a little bit. And because all that light shining back onto your eye, it's extremely bright. If other people are looking under night vision, they can see your eyes lit up a lot more than under the PVS14 eye. So it is something to keep in mind, is it could compromise your position. It could give away your position. Outdoor alert mode, again, is my favorite palette that I use regularly. And I typically just leave my device on outdoor alert for that reasoning. I will throw up some other videos that were recorded under outdoor alert. Again, nothing too phenomenal about it. The heat signature detection doesn't change with any of the palettes. Your battery life doesn't change by any of the palettes. The only thing is how your brain is able to perceive it. For some people, white hot might be the best for them. It's the easiest on their eyes. Their eyes are able to identify all the different signatures on the image a lot easier. For me, I enjoy the outdoor alert, so I don't have to work so hard to differentiate heat signatures and try to get the details on everything to try to make it out. And you'll be able to see in some of the other videos that I'll be showing you, is that outdoor alert really helps to stand out human heat, especially with the surrounding environment temperatures. Now, once you start throwing on gear, it does change things a little bit. Because obviously gear is going to have an ambient temperature lower than a human body, except for the internal areas of the gear that is touching the human body. And another interesting fact is exactly how different materials can help conceal you, or help kind of highlight, really brings out what it is that thermal does to augment the downfalls of the PVS14 or the image intensifiers. So for instance, image intensifier makes it a little bit difficult to see through this. I actually have some ambient lighting on in here just for clarity of video, but you can see the thermal. It sees through every one of them little squares, and it can clearly make me out. There are different materials out there that are designed with smaller openings in this sniper veil, and they are designed to completely block it, and they do a phenomenal job. This sniper veil, if you were to take 2 or 3 of them and layer them up, you could probably still see through it, but the thermal would get stopped right there. Another thing that movies have led people to believe is that somehow thermals can see through glass. Thermals cannot. Glass will appear to be one solid object, and you will not be able to see through them. So don't purchase these thinking you'll be able to see like the Predator and see through glass and be able to see the guy running on the high-rise building from Predator 2. No, it doesn't work that way. Glass is a solid object. Just because it's opaque and we can see through it doesn't mean the thermal can. The thermal image gets stopped at the glass pane because, again, it is a solid object. Thermal is able to see me right now, or see me through this veil, because of all the tiny little openings in there. There's no solid objects between myself and that thermal lens, and so it's able to see me. Once you put any sort of a solid object, whether it's opaque or not, it cannot see through it. So something to keep in mind. Don't let the movies deceive you. Don't let Hollywood deceive you into believing that thermals are these God-given gifts that can literally see through everything. It's not an X-ray machine. Okay, image intensifiers can see through glass. Thermals cannot. Keep that in mind. And now I'm going to attempt to demonstrate to you one of the greatest reasons to get thermal, and that is where night vision fails to be able to see into shadows without an external light source, such as IR illuminator or IR laser. And so I'm going to try to set it up and see if it works. This is about the best situation I'll be able to do without walking around town for about an hour trying to find the perfect spot where it really shines in its abilities. So obviously I've removed all the ambient lighting I can from this room, so my night vision is struggling to kind of really pick everything up. Clearly you can see me, clearly you can see around me, you can see some objects, but if you compare that to the breach image, you can absolutely see me. So the same demonstration that I was doing earlier using that sniper veil, image intensifier, it would appear I disappear. Thermal is still able to detect. So if I were to completely engulf my head, as far as the image intensifier goes, I don't exist under here. If I held completely still, you might miss me unless you have some sort of external illumination device. Whereas the thermal is able to detect some of my body heat. Just as such, if I were to be on the run, and I were to run away from you, and you're trying to find me, how advantageous would it be to be able to see a heat signature that lingers after I've long passed? Thermal imaging is incredible. It's an amazing technology. Again, it's not the end-all be-all, neither is the image intensifiers. But it is absolutely a great method, a great piece of equipment to help augment our shortcomings as humans. We cannot see in the dark. We cannot identify heat signatures like snakes. We don't have sonar like bats. All we have are these amazing eyes that see great in daylight or with some sort of a light source. So that's why I have night vision, that's why I have thermals, and that's why I use them regularly, because it's amazing. It's a great superpower to have. I hope this video is helpful for you. I hope you're able to understand better what you're getting into with thermals, even if you're not interested in the FLIR breach. I get that completely. It's not for everybody. It's not the greatest device out there. Again, it does not mount onto weapon systems very easily, and it certainly is a challenge to make sure that you're still going to be accurate when it is mounted on there. Whereas there are other brands out there, other models that are made specifically for that function with double the price. So I'm not trying to do that. And there are dedicated thermal optics that you can mount to your weapon system and leave it there. I do have a SIG brand, can't remember what it's called, the Echo or something like that, but it is a dedicated thermal weapon sight that I just don't use because I don't like the limitations of it being dedicated, being mounted, and it's too large, it's too bulky to be handheld. Not like the FLIR breach, which is very, very compact, easy to hold, easy to use. It's a great piece of equipment. It's a great addition. Is it absolutely necessary? No, by no means. But if you can afford it and you could pick one up, you will not be disappointed, especially if you're able to pick up a Wilcox bridge or a Mod Armory bridge or the KVC bridge, and then obviously you're going to have to get the adapters for the MUM13 to the dovetail. There's quite a list of things you end up having to do in order to run the FLIR breach and a PVS14 side by side on a bridge mount. And again, it's almost never going to marry up perfectly to have that fusion or that overlay. Some people's brains can do it, but majority of us can't. So if that's your goal, is to have that fusion image with a FLIR breach and a PVS14, it's not going to happen. Okay, the chances of it happening are very slim. It'll take a lot of time, a lot of work, even just to try to get them to fuse together to have that overlay appearance. So if you go into this with the expectations of that not being a thing or that not happening, then it would be advantageous for you to not have to worry about it and understand exactly how it's going to work, so that you don't go into this expecting it to be the greatest thing ever and perfect image overlay. It's just not going to happen. If that's all you want, you might save your money and bypass the FLIR Breach and go straight into the Jerry C or an E Cody. Otherwise, I hope this video was helpful. I hope you all were able to learn something from it. I hope you were able to gain a newfound knowledge or a newfound respect for the thermal imager, and understanding why so many people in the world, including Big Daddy Flannel, Garand Thumb, says if you don't have night vision in a conflict, you will die. I'm sorry, if you don't have thermal, you will die. Thermal is an amazing device. It's an amazing piece of equipment, and it truly does shed light where night vision fails. So it's a great piece of equipment to have on hand. But again, if you don't train with it, don't buy it. Don't waste your money, don't waste your time. If you're gonna buy the equipment, train with it, make sure you're proficient with it, make sure you understand it, how to use it, and how to maintain it. God forbid you come into a life or death situation where you're relying on that equipment and something goes wrong and you don't know how to fix it or handle it. It would make for a very bad day for everybody. So, with that being said, again, I hope the video was helpful, and I hope everybody gets out there, they train hard, so you can rest easy. So, in this next portion of the video, I'm trying to demonstrate the difference between night vision and thermal, and what you can and cannot see out of either one of them. So initially here where you see that light source, that's at 100 yards from the camera, and I just lit a cigarette. So I'm turning around and taking drags of the cigarette, facing the camera, facing away from it. And unfortunately my FLIR Breach was not in position correctly, so it didn't capture any of the 100-yard portions of it. But now I'm walking towards my steel targets, which I have set at 50 yards, and you can clearly see through the night vision that cigarette is super bright. I'm taking a drag here and there as I'm walking through, and you'll be able to really tell here shortly as I get up near the steel targets just how much light that tiny little cherry on that cigarette puts out. So here shortly, you're going to be able to see exactly what I'm referencing. As I come behind the steel target, you're not going to see a whole lot. Even the thermal really does not appear to be picking up anything extraordinary. But as I come around in front of the targets, as I take a drag of the cigarette, the night vision really illuminates the foreground and the background and the targets around me. You might have to pay kind of close attention. We actually did have good lume there. Whereas the thermal does not pick up any of that signature. So as long as I had my back to the FLIR, you would not see me taking a drag or anything like that. Or if you might not even be able to tell I even had a cigarette there or any sort of a heat source. But that tiny little cherry on that cigarette illuminates everything around you at least 10 yards in all directions that is visible. So right here I'm trying to demonstrate the differences in the thermal. So this is the outdoor alert mode, and you can see here my pants and my waffle top are just super orange, right? They're exhibiting a lot of the body heat from underneath. And what's happening here is because I'm towards the edge and you can see the ground kind of flare up in color. That's because the FLIR every 30 seconds is refreshing, trying to pick up a new heat signature to kind of focus on. And so I believe, because I'm on the edge of it, I'm not in the center, it is really displaying all my clothing there a lot brighter than it normally would, and you'll see in a later video here how that changes. Once I step out, you can clearly see a difference between my backpack and my the clothing I'm wearing, and even my helmet. So now that I am a little bit centered, it still has not really corrected itself to change the difference in the signature from the heat. This could be a multitude of reasons, and that skyline in the background is going to have a lot to do with it. The less skyline you have in the background, the more the FLIR is able to actually focus on the heat signatures within that 300-yard range. That skyline is just so bold and so flat and so massive, it really does kind of wash out, quote unquote, the FLIR eye. So this next portion, I've transitioned over to my Mark 18 to kind of reference the light signature as well as the heat signature that you see in comparison between the night vision and the FLIR. So this is unsuppressed at this point, and you can clearly see the night vision is auto-gated, so every time I fire, it's auto-gating for that split second there, but so it doesn't get completely washed out. The FLIR obviously doesn't have that problem, and if you paid attention to while it was shooting, you would see that the muzzle flash, the muzzle blast, all the gases escaping the end of the muzzle behind the bullet were clearly evident even on the FLIR. So once I suppress the Mark 18, the signature changes in both the FLIR and the under the night vision for all of the rounds except for the first one. So in the first round, you still get that auto gate flash out of the suppressor, and then from there, night vision doesn't have to auto gate anymore. And if you caught at the very end of the thermal image when it was suppressed, you can still see the muzzle blast. It's just not as evident. And here, this is just kind of demonstrating the glow of my suppressor after 30 rounds through the suppressor. And again, you can tell here that my clothing has changed. So I'm not sure exactly where the FLIR focuses to determine what kind of temperature variation it's trying to show with the outdoor alert palette. Especially seeing as how it displays the suppressor as a black hot rather than an orange hot.